Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Laura Binks, Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council. I'd like to welcome you to this extraordinary council meeting being held at the Nagambie Lakes Regatta Centre. We have a public gallery upstairs where we are meeting, and our wonderful ITC team have also set up a screen in the meeting room downstairs for other members of the community to view the proceedings. We also would like to make you aware that the microphone in this building is incredibly sensitive. It's this little box up here in the ceiling, and it picks up everything from whispers and all sorts of things. So just so that you're aware, we have a very sensitive microphone in this meeting space. I wish you all a very warm welcome to tonight's meeting. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to elders past, present and future. Today we're meeting on the lands of the Tangarang people of the Eastern Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. I'll just give an outline of how tonight's meeting will proceed. So we welcome everyone in our public gallery and also those who may be viewing the meeting through our live stream and via our website. This meeting is being held in accordance with Strathbogie Shire Council's governance rules. If we have technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we're unable to stream the proceedings to the public, we will continue with the meeting given that the public gallery is open. Voting by councillors for tonight's meeting will be held by a show of hands. If a councillor or an officer has a conflict of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure they have done so. The person will then be contacted to rejoin the meeting and after the matter has been considered and voted and the vote concluded. We have a community member who is registered to speak to an item on the agenda this evening. When I call on you to speak, can you please come forward? And I'm afraid you're going to have to bring your chair because we've used them all for the audience. And you can sit at the table at the front here to make your submission. And as I said, the microphone above will pick you up. Under governance, under our governance sub-rule 33.6, you will then have 5 minutes to make your presentation and a bell will sound at the 4-minute mark so that you know you have 1 more minute to focus on those last few points you wish to make. Councillors can ask questions of clarification but cannot enter into any debate. Under Governance Sub-Rule 53.1, speaking time for councillors is 5 minutes unless I grant an extension of time. Can I also please make a request of everyone present tonight to avoid using your phones during the meeting. As you may be aware, we have limited bandwidth in this facility, so our priority is on using the bandwidth to stream tonight's meeting to the broader community, and I thank you for your cooperation with this request. CEO Solomon, do we have any apologies this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there is an apology from Kristen Favaloro, the Executive Manager, Communications and Engagement.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Councillors and officers, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest to be made under Rule 94 of our Governance Rule and Division 2 of the Local Government Act 2020? Councillor Rayburn?
Yes, on item 2 on tonight's agenda with reference to the VEC electoral representation review. I've already put in my own personal one, so I've got an interest, but I haven't got it. So I'll be able to have a discussion.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Haysberg?
Thanks. Mayor, I also wish to declare an interest in that matter, the same matter as Councillor Rayburn just mentioned, around the VEC electoral review, because I have made 2 submissions already as a private citizen, but I've also considered the further information that I've received since making the submission, and I believe that the community deserves another option. So that's why I'm not declaring an conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Are there any further declarations of Councillor Hourigan?
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I also declare an interest in item 5.5.1. Is that right? Then non, because I made my own personal submission online, but it doesn't affect the review because they didn't come back with an option that I suggested.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
Hourigan. Councillor Dickinson.
We're in the same boat. I have put in a private submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Are there any further declarations of conflicts of interest to be made? No? Okay, councillors, can I now call for a procedural motion to suspend standing orders as we received a question from the public. This was not listed as an agenda item, and so suspension will allow for the question to be asked and answered. Councillors, can I have a motion to suspend standing orders to allow for a question of council to be asked under Governance Rule 83? Councillor Hesberg, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Rayburn, thank you. All those in favour? Against? And declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We have received a question from Darren Lyons from Kerwin's Bridge for tonight's meeting. Darren, would you like to come forward and ask your question?
Bring my own chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Can a firm commitment of substantial further funding from the Shire be given now for Kerwin's Bridge? Because it is such a critical piece of infrastructure, and I believe the Shire has a very clear legislated obligation to this heritage listed structure. I think the new Local Government Act 2020 also strengthens this responsibility, and by allocating funds in a transparent way, it will be a clear signal for the Shire to show how it values the bridge, and it will also be a very clear demonstration to the community that the Shire is committed to reopening the bridge. It will also strengthen the Shire's position to advocate to governments, Heritage Victoria and others for support and funding assistance. It would be indefensible, in my view, to be asking for support and funding from others without clearly demonstrating your own commitment.
Thank you, Darren. Susan Sullivan, can we have a response, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Darren, thank you for your question this evening, and in response, Council is very aware of the importance of Kerwin's Bridge to this community and to the broader community. We understand the impact of the bridge's closure on Kerwin's Bridge community. In terms of considering the allocation of funding, Council will be considering this matter at tonight's meeting. Furthermore, Council has indicated that it values the bridge through the establishment of the community panel to identify the long-term options for the bridge. We've also allocated funding to secure the services of JJ Ryan to undertake the scoping works for the two options of the bridge, namely a new replica bridge with pedestrian and cycling access, or extensive structural repairs and strengthening works to the existing bridge. The work on the design and the costings of these options is now, as you are aware, underway. Once this report has been received, Council will understand the quantum of works required and the funding required for the bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, CEO Solomon. Councillors, I now need a motion that the standing orders be resumed under Governance Sub-Rule 83.4. Can I have a motion, please? Councillor Murray, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Randall, thank you. In favour? And against? And declare that carried. We'll now proceed with the council meeting agenda as publicised. So we move to page 1 of the agenda. Officers' reports, item 5.3.1, contract variation, contract number 2022-23-01, Weir Road and Reedy Lake Road upgrade, Nagambie. Director Adamek, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Weir Road and Reedy Lane Road upgrade Nagambie project form a part of Council's 22-23 Capital Works program. At the August 2022 Council meeting, Council resolved to award contract number 22-23-01 for Weir Road and Reedy Lake Road upgrade Nagambie to Seven Creeks Excavations Proprietary Limited. After emerging as the successful tenderer following a competitive tender process, the lump sum contract was awarded to the contractor for a total sum of $738,070. The project was scheduled to commence in October. However, it was delayed due to the flood event. which resulted in isolation of Kerwins Bridge community. After informal discussions with the council officers, officers took the opportunity to learn from this flood event and reviewed the design of Weir Road and Reedy Lake Road and try to minimise the possibility of the road being impassable in any future similar flood. After future consultation, a revised design was completed with recommendation to alter the pavement layer to lift the sections of the road. After negotiations with the existing contractor, the altered design specification would require the approval of a revised contract price after negotiation of $1.822870 and 8 cents, inclusive of GST, representing a 147% increase to the original contract. There are 4 courses the actual council could take at this juncture. Option 1, deliver the project as originally scoped using the existing contractor with construction commencing in April 2023 and continuing during winter where there are heightened risk of short and long-term pavement failures due to inclement weather and conditions. Option 2, increase the design specification to raise the road pavement height to flood level and approve an exception to procurement policy and vary the existing contract by more than 20%. With work commencing in April and continuing during winter where there are heightened risk of short and long-term pavement failures due to inclement cool weather conditions. Option 3, increase the design specification to raise the road pavement height to above flood level and approve exception to our procurement policy to vary existing contract by more than 20%, with works commencing in September 2023 when weather conditions are more conducive to road construction. Option 4, cancel the existing contract, pay compensation to the existing contractor, which may be full contract price, and retender the project, new specification levels with construction commencing late 2023. Each of these 4 options have pros and cons, some with significant potential adverse impact on council and community, with the window for ideal weather for road building being over at the end of March. It is recommended that works begin in September and be completed by December 23. Delaying the commencement of works will overcome any further need to cost variations due to damage to work caused by inclement weather. On balance, it is recommended that option 3, approving exception to the procurement policy and approving variations to the contract to allow for the improved design specifications, but delaying commencement until September 2023 is considered the best course of action. However, there is a strong community sentiment and expectation that the road sealed prior to winter months. A meeting of the Kerwins Bridge Community Panel was held on the 28th of March 2023, during which feedback on the timing of this project was discussed, along with options for additional grading and watering of the road should the project be deferred to spring. Should Council decide to defer the construction until September, Council Operations team will continue to monitor the conditions of Weir Road, allocate resources to grading the road once a fortnight if required. The regularity of grading will be informed by regular inspections by operations staff and will be dependent on weather conditions over the winter period. There are 2 options to enable regular grading to occur. Option 1 is to take a grader out of rotation and allocate it solely to Weir Road, which would cost around $2,830. Option 2 is to hire additional grader to allocate the Weir Road cost of $105,709, inclusive GST, for a 5-month period. It is considered that there would be an adverse impact on other communities, given that taking existing grader out of rotation would delay the scheduled grading program across the broader locality. Therefore, option 2 is recommended as the preferred course of action. This additional budget allocation needs to be made as a part of additional funding package for this project. It is recognised that this is a difficult decision to make given the complexity of issues and competing interests. However, it is considered that taking a longer-term sustainable view of the project result in reduced interruptions and safety impacts of the community, along with better long-term value for money outcomes for Council. Councillors, there is a recommendation on page 3 for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adamak. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for the Director? Councillor Hayesburg?
Mayor Binks, I have a few. They might be directed at they're finance related. So how are we actually covering the costs of the additional costs towards the upgrades should we go with this recommendation?
So through you, Mayor, the recommendation, I think it's point 6 talks about, or point 3 talks about carrying forward, if we're delaying it until September, carrying forward the money that's allocated in the 2022-23 budget to the 2023-24 budget, and then also using an allocation in a preliminary draft budget that we have for 2024 for flood recovery costs of $1.7 million. It's in the draft budget, and so it'd be using part of that money.
And can you please also explain how we're covering the additional costs for the grading, the $105,000 for maintenance?
So through you, Mayor, it's from the same bucket of money. Okay. So we would have a part carry forward, but then using part of that draft budget's $1.7 million for flood recovery.
Okay, thanks. And I also wanted to ask, how is this, does our procurement policy allow for large contract variations of this nature?
Yeah, look, through you, Mayor, we had a very long discussion with the executive team and also our procurement officer, who's also a probity expert as well. And we thought about what the procurement policy said around variations. You'll see as point 1, we actually talk about this decision coming to council because it is more of a variation, a higher variation than we would normally consider through the procurement policy. The factors or the pros and cons about that was really if the contractor had talked about keeping the 2022 rates, a schedule of rates that had been part of the original contract that was signed. If we actually went back and re-tendered, we would get 2023-24 rates. And we know that materials and services, particularly road construction materials, are going up by about 14% per annum. And so in terms of the project costs, we believe it would actually escalate quite significantly. So there are pros and cons, and the policy is silent, I suppose, in terms of the process. So we've come back to council to be very transparent around the fact that it is quite a sizable variation. I don't think we've actually seen variations of this size before, and so that's why we're coming back to council. But given the value for money and the best value requirements of the Local Government Act, that's why we're coming back to council for consideration.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bray. Are there any further questions or clarifications? Councillor Murray.
Could I ask a question about the quality or the quality of the Nagambie Rushworth Road and Kettles Road, and how what's the quality of those roads that are either side of this Weir Road upgrade?
Kettles Road, is that the one that goes into Reedy Lane?
Well, that's the one that goes in from the Kerwins Bridge side, and the other one comes out the other side, sort of.
Quite a lot of the roads around here were built back in 15, 20 years ago, and some of them even earlier. So the road construction was at that stage. What we were dealing with now is current road construction processes and procedures and standards. And that came about in the 2004 Road Management Act, and we have to be compliant with that. So there are other roads around us that are less favourable, and they are deteriorating. However, that is a part of our maintenance regime and asset management plan to ensure that even those roads will start to get upgraded.
Thank you, Director Adamak. Are there any further questions of clarification? Councillor Berrigan?
Thanks, Mayor Binks. Just to continue on from that, through you, Mayor, and I'm trying to word this in a little bit of a better way. So because we were already updating Weir Road, then we flooded, that gave the foresight of our staff to see that that road floods significantly, which means if we were to put it back knowing this information, what does that mean for the organisation?
It will surely flood again. If we get the same amount of rain as we did, it will flood.
And the risk of knowing this information?
Director Bray might like to add to that.
Yeah, so through you. So in terms of risk, that's a good point to raise, Councillor. We have a strategic risk register that identifies the key risks for council, and climate change and adapting to climate change is one of those strategic risks. So in council's strategic risk register, we do have a risk around making sure that infrastructure is designed to mitigate flood damage as much as we can. So it certainly is raised in our risk register. So it is important to consider that risk.
Thank you.
Councillor Murray.
Will I ask another question of the Director? Will the upgrade of this Weir Road reduce the risk of flooding between Kerwin's Bridge and Nagambie along that section of road, so the back road there of Kettles and Weir and what's the other road, Nagambie?
Through you, Mayor, that is a question that I cannot answer because I'm talking about this one road that we're talking about. We haven't done any design on any of the other roads, but the design was carried out for this project to ensure that we will not get flooded if the same type of flood event occurs next week or week after, whenever it may be. So for me to understand whether it's going to flood the rest of the area, I'm sorry, I can't comment on that.
Thank you, Dr. Adamak. CEO Solomon?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Just further to Vlad's commentary, Councillor Murray, it also gives upgrading this road gives a viable route out for Kerwin's Bridge community should flood occur again, and so that's why the recommendation is stated as it is. So it's really the one route. Yes, there might be other routes and roads impacted by the flood, but by doing this, we've identified this as the best route to provide access. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Are there any further questions of clarification? No. I have one question of clarification, if I may, Director Adamak. Regarding the different, so the original the original project and tender and the new variation, do you have an idea of the potential impact of not just flood but also other traffic on that road, and would we be looking at a better longer term solution in this proposal, I think?
Yes, look, so when we looked at this proposal, we needed to understand the geotech formation of the area and understand what flood levels were impacted. So to mitigate that, we had to design the road to those requirements. Now, designing this road will enable us to comply with our green-friendly, the environment, and making sure we're doing the right thing by the environment and not having to rebuild the road again. Eventually, you're going to have to rebuild the road or wherever it may be 20, 25 years' time. That's a given. However, understanding that it will enable larger trucks to go through and that type of stuff. So it will take the load.
Thank you for that clarification. Hayesburg.
Can I please just follow on from your question, Mayor? So would you say that Director Adamek, would you say that the recurrent costs of upgrading the road over the next 10 years would exceed the costs should we adopt this recommendation?
If we have floods, and judging by all the predictions, hopefully they're wrong, but it would be underwater, and the roads that have been underwater in the last flood, they're coming to fruition, or that we're finding out 4 or 5 months later that they've had it, and now we're pushing DOT to get compensation for that. So if a road is covered, it will suffer. It will suffer.
Thank you for that clarification, Director Adamak. Are there any further questions or clarification? Yes, Councillor Verrigan.
Sorry, Mayor Biggs.
No, it's
I
fine.
just thought of this one,
No.
and this may be for the CEO or for Vlad, but I'll let you make that decision.
Well, they can.
They can make that decision. Through you, Mayor, is there a plan moving forward, or is there a discussion, knowing that we haven't received the report from JJ's, to be able to give the community the potential of both options, where we upgrade the road to standard to limit the risk of what we know is going to occur, but also to be able to, apply funding, advocate to state, advocate to federal. We know that we've just gone through elections, yet elections are still going to come back again, 2025, 2026.
So thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm happy to take that one. Thank you for your question. The upgrading of Weir Road and the long-term solution or mid-term solution of Kerwin's Bridge are not mutually exclusive. So to say that we're just doing Weir Road to exclude having to think about Kerwin's Bridge, that's not the case. We know that in any flood event, if Kerwin's Bridge was able to be opened, if a flood event, you cannot access the community. We know the community was cut off last time, either because of the bridge or because of Weir Road. So not mutually exclusive. So what JJ Ryan, we are anticipating that we will have that report in this side of June. And that will give us an understanding of the scope and the quantum of funding required to bring up Kerwin's Bridge and reopen Kerwin's Bridge. Then, as we've indicated previously with the community, then we need to go shoulder to shoulder with the community to advocate to state and federal government to find the funding. And of course, it's up to council about a contribution from council, but we know that ambition will be well above our capacity to fund it as an organisation. So we will need external funding.
Yeah. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Dickinson.
Oh, thank you. I'm told that this is a 1 in 100 year event, and I know that can change. I'm not sure how much rainfall there was out at Kerwin's Bridge, but I believe there were other roads that were also affected, perhaps not to the same severity. But by building this new road and raising it 300 millimetres, won't that help the situation? You're talking about, I know, 600 mil, is that correct?
Yeah.
Whereas with option 1, I think it is, or the existing contract, it's a 300 mil raise. Won't that situation mitigate the flood situation similar to all other roads in the area?
All right. I'm just trying to. I think I understand.
I think I might have the answer, and correct me if I'm wrong because I'm no engineer. But my understanding is the 300, 600 refers to pavement depth, not height of the road.
Yeah. So the pavement depth will be a 600 pavement depth, which will mitigate, as you call, 1 in 100 year flood. All right. I'm not sure if it was 1 in 100 or 1 in 50 or 1 in 25. I'm not sure about that because that's something that they still have to. So it will enable Kerwin's Bridge people to use that road, because there's a lot of drainage involved in it, and there's a lot of exterior works or surrounding works that needs to occur, and that will occur during that time.
Can I just ask for clarification, Director Adamak? The original proposal which we approved last year, the 300 mil depth of pavement doesn't see any rise in height to the existing road. So we won't, the actual road pavement will remain at the same height as what it is now. And it will, if we have a flood like we've just had in October, we know it will flood again because it flooded in October. So whilst the 300 mil, is that correct? Am I correct?
So 300 mil pavement, if you think about the road that was there, the gravel road, that roughly would have been the height of that 300 mil pavement depth. That would have been the height. But because it was flooded and we had great difficulty, especially in one area over there, trying to get people through, that's where we decided, okay, let's have a look at it. Let's do a design and get the geotech and lift it up. So that 600 mil will give us the depth that we require.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adamak. Councillor Andrews had a question for clarification.
Thank you, Mayor, to Director Adamak, if I may. With the improved road, as we call, let's call it that, can the council guarantee, I guess, 100% it won't flood into the future?
No, I can't do that because 1 in 100 years, we need to understand, it was designed at the time for this flood event. If I had a crystal ball and could look into it, I would be able to tell you, no, there's no guarantees in.
Thank you. Councillor Murray?
So two questions, if I may. The first question is what we're talking about is the middle section of two roads that join Kerwin's Bridge and Nagambie, with Kettles Road on one side, Nagambie Rushworth Road on the other side, and Weir Road in the middle. So the two other roads that are already bitumised, are they a 300 mil depth themselves, or are they even less than 300 mil because they were built 25 years ago or whenever?
Okay, so if you go back 25 years, some of those roads would have been constructed from gravel, with a gravel 200, 150 mil, whatever it was around these days. I can't tell you what those roads are made up of until I get a geotech design, and I can't.
Okay, that's all right. So we're doing up the middle section of this connectivity route, and we're talking about 300 mil or 600 mil for the middle section, and we're not talking anything about the other connecting bits of road. Which may flood or may not flood, correct me if I'm wrong, depending on what happens, with the weather. My question for them is this middle section is with the 600 mil that is the proposal from officers, that's not actually lifting the road up another 300 mil, it's just maybe digging down another 300 mil to make 600 mil of pavement depth. Is that correct, or are we actually actually less likely to flood because we're lifting the height of the road?
So we had to design it to flood levels, flood-proof levels. So in some sections it will be raised, some sections might stay the same, but there is a total design that had to occur to ensure that we get, some sections you might get 300, some sections, in some areas where it was really low, the pavement will need to be built up, but not out of a structural pavement, but of other material.
Okay, so if I could just pursue this, so the risk of that road being inundated is not mitigated by our works because the level of the top level of the road will, in some places, in many places, may be the same height as the current road. So if it's going to be inundated, it will still be inundated again, regardless of what we do. Is that?
No, because we're talking about a whole section of road which includes drainage upgrades, and so we disperse that water.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Director Adamak. Councillor Rayburn, do you have a question, clarification?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to the Director of Infrastructure and Sustainability. Just clarifying with me, the 600 mil depth of the road pavement, is that allows the moisture not to seep up to the bitumen, which would affect the bitumen, the maintenance of the bitumen for many more years, rather than have it at 300 where the water could seep up towards that bitumen.
Okay. Capillary action is what we're talking about.
Correct.
Okay. So the higher the pavement, the less, or the more effort water net takes to go up as a capillary action. The lower the pavement, the faster it will go up. And if that's what you're asking, yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Adamak. Are there any further questions or clarification? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor, and to the Director. With the drainage and culverts and those mitigating beside the road, they'll be similar or the same to what would be with the new road. Is that correct? Or?
No. If I understand the question, so you're talking about the 300 mil or this?
I'm talking about the initial road. There'll still be culverts, there'll still be drainage associated with that road. Yes or no?
No. It's a totally different design. Totally different design.
I think, if I'm correct in understanding, there will be drainage associated with the original
But not
design,
to the extent of.
but it will be a different design from what is being proposed by officers tonight, because this design is in response to the flooding in October. So yes, there'll be drainage associated, but it will not mitigate against a flood like we saw in October. In the original design. Okay, are there any further questions of clarification? Not at this stage. Okay, thank you, councillors, and thank you, officers, for your patience in responding to those questions. Councillors, we have a community member wishing to speak to us this evening, Jackie Anton. Jackie, if you'd like to come forward with your chair, please. Jackie, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation, and a bell will sound at the 4-minute mark.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Jackie Anton. I have lived at Cowan's Bridge and Goulburn Weir for 39 years. I'm here today representing the Cowan's Bridge Community Panel. Thank you for rescheduling this meeting and giving us the opportunity to consider the options for this very important decision. The additional time has allowed us to canvass input from our Cowan's Bridge community. And as we've all heard, everybody has heard about the impact of Cowan's Bridge closure and have seen and heard the difficulty this issue has caused. The bridge is important for fire, ambulance, for school buses, for the daily commute, for visiting family and friends, for our local farmers, and for tourism, which the Shire has actively encouraged by promoting waterways and wineries. Cowan's Bridge is part of the fabric of the Cowan's Bridge and the wider Nagambie and regional communities, and is essential to our daily lives. It provides essential access to vital services and to living in this location. The closure of the bridge has caused a physical division of our community. The Cowan's Bridge appreciates the sealing of Weir Road, and without question, it will improve the current temporary situation of living without a bridge. However, we believe it's important to note that whilst the plan to floodproof Weir Road is appreciated, there are sections on Kettles Road, Reedy Lake Road, Nagambie Rushworth Road and Goulburn Weir Murchison Road which flood in heavy rain and would render Weir Road inaccessible. In that instance, we would still have no access to services in Nagambie. The $1.822 million allocated to the road is a huge amount of money by anybody's standards, and will not deliver, in our view, the floodproofing of Weir Road. This would not completely solve our back road problem, and so spending this amount of money making the road floodproof, we don't believe is the best solution. At the August 2022 council meeting, it was resolved to award the contract of $738,000. The Coens Bridge Community Panel believe this is the best option for Weir Road, and then hold and quarantine the remainder of the funds to the opening of the bridge. We firmly believe this is a more equitable, balanced and sustainable solution. We need funds directed to the opening of the bridge. The Commonwealth and the state were lobbied after the bridge was closed in 2001 and 2002, and again in 2011-2012. And that represents over 20 years of commitment from the Coens Bridge community to keep our bridge open. Council has a very clear legislated obligation to this heritage structure, and the new Local Government Act of 2020 also strengthens this responsibility. And as Darren has mentioned, by allocating funds to the bridge in this way, it transparently demonstrates commitment to the community who haven't wavered in their support for this wonderful bridge. It also demonstrates how Council is valuing the bridge, and importantly it will strengthen Council's position to advocate for governments, Heritage Victoria and others for support and funding. It would be indefensible to be asking for support funding from others without clearly demonstrating Council's commitment. As to the appropriate timing of the road upgrade, this decision should be made by Strathbogie Shire Council with the benefit of the information that they have to hand. And we had hoped to see an amended motion put forward today and would urge the councillors to support that. And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Clarification for Jackie. Councillor Haysberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just, so you're worried, you're concerned that this potential upgrades to the road won't mitigate against access.
I know.
Why do you say that?
It won't, because Kettles Road, Ngambie Reedy Lake Road, Ngambie Rushworth Road floods anyway. I have seen Weir Road in the time that I've lived there. I've seen Weir Road underwater many times. So the other roads are underwater as well. So if we spend all this money on Weir Road, we can't get to it. It doesn't really help our cause.
So for residents, you're saying that live on those roads, then the residents living on those roads off Weir Road are no better off?
Anybody coming from Coens Bridge, from say the Coens Bridge Fire Station, McLeod Street, Grandview, McLeod Street, into Kettles Road. Kettles Road floods at two places there, at two spots there. I don't know whether anybody knows where the water truck fills his tank to go and water when they're grading. He fills that from the causeway outside the old skydiving centre. That floods like that. That's half Billabong, half river. It floods with very little rain. So we can't get past that to get to Weir Road. Likewise, Ngambie Reedy Lake Road can't get past it because it's underwater. The culvert at the end of Kettles Road, first turn onto what is Reedy Lake Road, almost washed away in the last flood. And I'm not sure whether it's on the plan for the new upgrade of the road because we don't have a copy of the plan, but we won't be able to get past that. We couldn't get past it last time. So that's the situation. Yeah.
Thanks, Jackie. Are there any further questions or clarification for Jackie?
Can I please just direct a question at So,
Councillor Haysberg.
will the upgrades help to mitigate any of those effects on the adjoining roads that residents are concerned about.
Okay, I thank you for your contribution there. Look, we need to realise that once rains come, everything will be flooded.
Correct.
Okay, that will be flooded. This is the start of something that will need to happen eventually in the near future, where councils will have to start upgrading their roads, streets, to ensure that we are becoming flood resistant. This is just a small part of what needs to happen throughout the whole council, not just in this area, but throughout the whole area. This is something that is going to put forward or put us in front of what we're doing. So we build this, if we build this road, next step could be kettles, whatever it may be, but it has to be done in a systematic way. These are works that need to occur to go forward in relation to proofing our community.
No.
Thank you, Councillor, Director Adamak. Are there any further questions or clarifications for Jackie? Councillor Hourigan?
Thanks, Mayor Biggs. Thanks, Jackie, for coming tonight, and thank you for speaking. The question I have, I suppose, is if Curwens Bridge was still in place now and you could still use it, and we were to upgrade this road according to this report that we've been received, and there was another flood, what you're telling us tonight, and I just want to clarify it in really simple terms, is you still would be able to get out of Curwens Bridge to Nagambie using Weir Road.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, so you would only have been able to go to Murchison.
Correct.
Murchison, no. So no way. You're stranded either way. So unless they were doing the whole Reedy Lake, Weir Road, Nagambie Rushworth Road, that would be the only way, Kettles Road, that would be the only way to get to Nagambie.
Without the bridge.
And
Without a bridge.
I think it's also worth, and there's a lot of people here that have been here probably longer than we have. Weir Road is on a floodplain. So I won't use the term, but we're pushing something in the wrong direction. It's a floodplain. It's been underwater before, and it'll be underwater again, regardless of how much money we throw at it, unless we've sort of suddenly win Tats Lotto on them. And the Shire sort of says, we're flush with money, we'll build a new bridge or whatever. It's just that it's a floodplain. Doesn't change the fact. So you only need to speak to the farmers out there. They'll tell you all about it.
Thanks, Jackie.
So
Are there any further questions or clarification for Jackie? No, if not, thank you so much, Jackie, and you may return with your seat.
Mayor Biggs, before we go to a motion, am I able to please call an adjournment of the debate for a period of 15 minutes?
Yes, you need,
Do I need someone to second my
you
motion?
need to move a motion to adjourn.
Just want to adjourn for 15 minutes for a chat?
So,
Yeah.
Councillor Hourigan, you're moving a motion to adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes?
Please, so let's just to make it even, let's make it 7:05 return, 7:05 p.m. return.
Yes, and seconded Councillor Murray. And can I see a show of hands, all those in favour? And against? Everyone's in favour, and I declare that carried. Thank you. We will go next door to a meeting. And we'll call on officers as and when we need them. Thank you all for that. Councillors, do I need a motion? Yes, I do. Can I have a motion that we resume the meeting?
So moves, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn, a seconder. Councillor Haysberg, thank you. All those in favour? Against? Just to resume the meeting. Just to continue back, to come back. Thank you. Carried. Thank you, Director Bray. Okay, so councillors, are there any further questions or clarification of the officers regarding the item? No? Okay, if not, then councillors, can I have a motion please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to put forward an alternate motion if I could, please.
Yes, can you state your motion please, Councillor Andrews?
Thank you. That we deliver the project as originally scoped using existing contract, the construction commencing in September 23 and concluding in December 23, knowing the cost escalation of the project will be $154,000, $154,994, to a total cost of $929,964. This includes GST and 20% project contingency costs. Note that the additional operational expenditure allocation of $105,709, including GST, is required to be made by council as part of the project costs to hire a grader to be stationed at Weir Road, provide for fortnightly grading until the road works commence in the spring, in line with the request from local residents. Approve the carry forward of the budget allocated to this project in the 2022-23 financial year to the 23-24 financial year, while providing an additional budget allocation within the 23-24 capital works program to cover this variation, and allocate the $820,000, which remains, for the future repairs and maintenance of Kerwin's Bridge in the draft capital works budget for 23-24.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Is there a seconder to Councillor Andrews' motion?
Can I please ask a clarifying question to
Councillor Andrews? Sure.
Might need to be directed at the director, or Director Bray, Finance. So what would be the implications of tying up this $800,000 for Kerwin's Bridge?
So I'll take that one if you like, Mayor. As I explained before, the increased cost of the project in terms of the officer recommendation was coming from the proposed draft budget of $1.7 million for flood recovery. So if you're allocating part of that money, or $820,000 to a project Kerwin's Bridge, then that comes out of that flood recovery money and becomes a separate line item. So that just leaves the remainder, which would be about $700,000 for flood recovery in the draft budget.
So does that mean communities who are impacted by floods will be missing out on flood rectification works because money would be tied up with the bridge?
So the $1.7 million is a Shire-wide fund, so it was to fund projects across the entire Shire after further work was done. And so you're basically allocating a large proportion of that fund to a particular project, which means, yes, there is less to go around in terms of the broader Shire.
Thanks, Director.
Are there any further? So that answers your question. So the motion as read out by Councillor Andrews. Councillor Dickinson, are you seconding the motion?
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Dickinson is seconding the motion. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Kerwin's Bridge Community Panel for their long work over the previous months regarding this issue, and previous years probably, many years. And also like to thank the community for the support of the panel and getting us to this point. I believe our job as councillors is to try and leave the community better than we found it, and not only plan for now, but the medium long-term future of the Shire. This is a very emotional issue, and which involves the greater community's heritage, as well as the local community's needs and wishes. It's also a focal point for people visiting our Shire to come out to Kerwin's Bridge, and that might start the process of them enjoying the rest of the Shire, up to Yarrow or out to Violet Town or Longwood, whatever it may be. So it's an important item from that point of view. Again, a Weir Road, Reedy Lake Road connection there, certainly do, but the bridge being open offers a greater expanse to not only the local community, but plenty of communities through that area that use that as a go through. What's going to occur? I've received this item here from, I think, Jackie, was it? And you tabled that. Thank you very much for that. And there was a lot of you, or most of you here today, there on that day, which shows your commitment to the bridge. But I mean, it can't stop there from that point of view. It's going to be an ongoing push, not only from council, but from certainly from the group you've got there. And whilst there's the council is right at this stage to keep the bridge closed. All right, they have a report from the insurers, a gloomy report as it is. It's still a report from the insurers, and I guess the risks are too high in overriding or trying to go around that report. There's no insurance. Property-wise, there's no indemnity insurance if we go in the face of that FMG report. So, and I appreciate there's an optimistic report out there, but again, I think they've been canvassed as far as giving in the council an indemnity and providing insurance, and that's not been met, that request. So I think at this stage, the bridge is closed, the motion's on the table there, and I'd ask my fellow councillors to consider that. We'll take a vote on that motion, please.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak to the motion now or reserve your right?
Thank you, Mayor. And community have put forward their point of view. Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Vlad, for your expert background and comments as well. For many years, this community have lived with a situation of an unsafe road and an unsafe bridge. They've gone through the correct channels and were invited to make a submission. This was done through a properly elected panel, and as a council, we need to listen, consider, make a responsible decision, not an emotional one. In my opinion, their viewpoint is well thought out. It's undergone thorough discussion, and they've now placed it in our hands. This ongoing process needs to end tonight. I support the motion as it is written and urge my fellow councillors to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Rayburn?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you and to the community. I understand the motive behind this. I understand the Kerwin's Bridge, to keep Kerwin's Bridge alive, keep going forward. What I'm here tonight to discuss is Weir Road and Reedy Lake Road, not the bridge. I'm sorry, I'm not here to discuss the bridge. I'm here to make sure that what I do as a councillor is for the betterment of our whole community across the municipality. And under our climate emergency discussions, which we had 18 months, 2 years ago, we made a decision to improve our infrastructure, that in future times for our community of today, but also of tomorrow, to upgrade our infrastructure to ensure that if any more floods come, we will try and mitigate it. This tonight is about upgrading a road to start the mitigation. So eventually, council, all over the years, could take 10, 15 years, upgrade that road to give you greater access into the Nagambie. I can't give you an answer on the bridge, and I am unable to do that. I cannot get a crystal ball to tell you when that's going to get opened or what's going to happen or how it's going to work. But what I can do tonight is say to you, by not going with this motion, but giving you the better road, which is a betterment road, will give you better access for the future, and that's what you guys are all after. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would any councillor like to speak to the motion, speak against the motion? Yes, Councillor Haysbell.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. I agree with the remarks made by Councillor Rayburn. I think over in the long term, with the road being bedded for the future, according to the officer's report, we would be saving ratepayers money, and it would be the sensible option. Councillor Andrews and Councillor Dickinson talked about community safety and not politicising the issue, but I feel like tonight you're politicising the issue because our aim is to provide a safer road for the community. It's a staged approach. The Weir Road would be the first stage, and it would need to be projected for the future to create a safe avenue for the community of Kerwins Bridge. I think this is a prime example of the impacts of climate change on communities and on council. There are huge financial implications, yes, but we have made a pledge to mitigate against climate change, and we're legislated to do so under the Local Government Act. So by not taking that into consideration, we would be not abiding by the Act, I'm afraid. So I can't support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbell. Would councillor like to speak? Thank you.
I'd like to speak against the motion.
Murray?
And I do so with, disappointment, I suppose, in a way, because this issue, and I thank the community for coming along, but I think the issue here is become clouded with the Kerwins Bridge issue and the road access issue. So there's sort of two access points here, and I don't really want to suggest that one is more important than the other, but both are important. And I think we've got an opportunity, though, today to actually fix one of the accesses to your community. And it's my view that as a council, we ought to be doing the best that we possibly can for our community moving forward for the future. That's not to say that a bridge isn't important, and I think it is important, but we've got a road here that we've got to do up, which in the short to medium term has to be fixed. And we ought to be doing the best that we can by that bit of road. Now, there are other bits of roads, and Jackie talked about that, Kettles and Nagambie, Rushworth and all the other ones, that they need a bit of work too. But this is the bit that we're looking at the moment. This is the bit that we as a council have to concentrate on tonight. And I think that for the sake of the community moving forward, that we need to concentrate on that and do the best we can with the mitigation of the flood effects on that particular bit of road. I worry about next week, next month, a year's time when somebody's got, sort of a father who has a heart attack and you've got to get something out there. And I would be really worried if we didn't do the road up to a standard which would at least reduce the amount of time that it would be closed for flood events. And I'm sure that this particular bit and our projects moving forward with this access will improve access for the community. So I'd like to vote for against this motion and for the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Berrigan?
Thanks, Mayor Binks. Thank you to all the community that have come in tonight to speak to us. It's it is a difficult role sometimes to represent the ratepayers who by you're elected, and also balancing the risk of an organisation. And this is a very hard decision because it doesn't make sense to me that you can't access the Kerwins Bridge community if it floods, even by putting $1.8 excess million into a road. So if you can't access it, where is the common sense in that? I can't, and you know, I've thought about it. Okay, so we put the money in, we put $1.8 million into doing up this road. Do we have a plan currently in place to do the roads around it? No. Do we have a plan for Reedy Creek Road at the moment and how we're going to stop the floods? Do we have a plan for Kettles Road? Do we have a plan for Nagambie Rushworth Road? There's no plan there. And whilst, you know, I can hear that they're talking about Kerwins Bridge in part of it, they're saying you can't access Kerwins Bridge by spending $1.8 million on this road.
That's right.
Right? That's what they've said. So you've got to have a bit of common sense. So you've got to represent ratepayers, you've got to balance the risk, but you've also got to have a little bit of common sense. And so I believe that, and then just to go on to the safe thing, because that was a really big thing for me, which is why I asked the question about risk. But how can a drivable ambulance access Kerwins Bridge community if we don't have a plan for the other roads? So I would encourage...
Can I ask the gallery to remain quiet, please?
So I'd encourage my fellow councillors to vote with this recommendation, knowing that we can also, in the future, mitigate flood for all of the roads at the one time, rather than doing it this way, considering we don't have a plan. Or we can put a plan in place and then come back and look at how we can look at the flood mitigation. If that's raising parts of the road, we can have a look and cost it up at that particular point.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I ask the gallery to remain quiet, please? Councillor Andrews, would you like your right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think we've all had a fair crack at it, so I'll leave it to the
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. That being the case, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour of the alternate motion as put forward by Councillor Andrews? And against? I'm going to declare that lost.
Another division.
Certainly, Councillor Dickinson. Can I see a show of hands for those in favour, please? Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Horrigan and Councillor Andrews. And against? Councillor Rayburn, Councillor Hayes-Burke, Councillor Murray and Councillor Binks. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, given that the motion has been lost, can I ask for a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendation as printed on page 3 be adopted by council. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Murray. Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think personally we've made all our discussions known on exactly what we've been talking about. All I'll say is that we have to start somewhere. I understand the community are not in favour of this, but we as a council under the Road Safety Act and under the Road Maintenance Act, we have to build roads that meet this requirement. So this is part of that area, and that's the reason why I'm voting for this.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Would any councillor like to speak to the motion, for the motion? Councillor, sorry, did you want to speak? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you. Mayor Binks, I'll speak to the motion because I don't want the motion to lapse. So whilst the other recommendation failed, it's if you revert back to the original one, it's not going to work, you know, as in being able to allocate extra money and etc. So that's why I'm voting for the motion. I just want to make it known publicly that's why.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Councillor Haysbrook, did you want to speak?
I know the community is disappointed, and I do want to thank them all for coming out tonight, but I'm just concerned that the previous motion was giving false hope to the community, because 800,000 wouldn't go very far to upgrading the bridge. And as was already been spoken about, the two issues seem to have been conflated. It's not to say that we're going to stop advocating for the bridge. We do see it as a really critical issue in the Shire, and the Mayor can testify that continuously she's raising it with politicians, and we clearly do have a plan for the future, which is why we've got the JJ Ryan report, the consultants on board, so that we can have some viable options, so we know what the costs are. I just don't want you to feel like we're not thinking about you. We are, and we do care deeply about the future of the bridge. So I'm sorry that you'll probably be disappointed tonight, but as has been raised, I don't think that, knowing the issues with flooding, that we could just say yes to a mediocre road when we know that we can do better for our community. And as councillors, we have to govern for all, and we have to govern for future generations. So I'm afraid that's why we have to award this contract and go for this tender tonight. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbrook. Councillor Murray.
I suppose I'll just add to a couple of points that I made before. I think what we need to do the best we can, and I think this is the best that we can do at the moment for this particular access. Doing up Weir Road, doing it properly, making sure it's up to standard, making sure that it survives the next 25 years, that it's not going to get washed away, it's not going to get potholes, but it's going to be robust and it can last. That's not to say that the other bits of road don't need to be done. That's always a problem in Shires. You know, Kettles Road and the other roads need to be done as well. But we're just doing the best we can with that particular road, and we're making sure that road will enable traffic and emergency vehicles and all the business that needs to be conducted along that road. It'll enable that to happen. So, I think that this is the best option. It will reduce the risks for the community, and I think we ought to pursue this one.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Rayburn, would you like your right of reply?
I was Councillor Dickinson and Councillor Andrews speaking.
They didn't want to when asked. Yes.
All right, no worries. Thank you. No, I just believe this is the proper and right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 12 of the agenda. If members of the gallery would like to depart, as this item is not related to Kerwin's Bridge, I invite you to do so, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just say thank you to all the councillors for listening and hearing us. We respect your decision, disappointed as we are, but a lot of work's gone into this, so thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
And please know that we will continue to advocate strongly.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice, thank you. Just sorry about the VUC.
Billy, hello to mum and dad for me.
Thank you. There's a moth flying around the room.
I thought he was going to attack me.
So did I. Nearly landed in our water. Right.
Thanks for your patience, everyone joining us online as the gallery departs. We'll now move to page 12 of the agenda tonight, which is the notice of motion lodged by myself with Councillors Hourigan and Councillor Haysbrook. submission to the Electoral Representation Review Panel's preliminary report. So this report is in response to the, I'm just getting up the page, thank you. So councillors Christy Horrigan and councillors and councillor Sally Haysberg and myself lodged a notice of motion to note that local council electoral structure review preliminary report of the Strathbogie Shire Council of March 2023 prepared by the Electoral Representation Advisory Panel, and that was made available to the public, and that we would like to make a submission to the Electoral Representation Advisory Panel in response to their preliminary report advocating for an electoral structure that provides for 7 councillors, thereby minimising the need for the Mayor to use a casting vote to decide on matters, given this is considered to be a poor governance outcome that has the potential to impact on efficient and representative decision making, and B, the adoption of a 7-ward model, each with a single councillor as a representative, to ensure all communities of interest have a voice in their elected council, and that the potential dominance of candidates from the larger areas and townships is overcome, and that the council thirdly makes a request in submission for an opportunity for myself to make a verbal presentation of our written submission to the Electoral Representation Advisory Panel's online public hearings on the 19th of April. So, councillors, there is a motion before you on page 13 of the agenda for tonight's meeting, and I will go straight on to asking if you have any questions or clarification of myself, I guess. No?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure. Yes, Councillor Murray.
In a single ward, seven councillor single ward model, is it a requirement that the councillor live in the particular ward that they stand for?
I don't believe that's a requirement under the VEC's current structure, and I will ask a governance officer to assist me, but I don't believe that changes. It currently isn't a requirement, and I don't believe that changes.
Through you, Mayor, you've got to be on the electoral roll for the municipality.
Okay.
Are there any further questions or clarification? No? Okay, councillors.
There is going to be debate. That's a question.
That's not a question of clarification. Oh, sorry.
Is
Are you going to say, is there going to be? Yes, well, I've got to put the motion to.
Okay,
I haven't got a motion yet.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
What am I questioning?
No, because I'm just presenting the report.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was questioning about the motion.
No. I'm just presenting the report.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, so we haven't got a motion yet.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm excited for it.
So I'll now ask councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg, thank you.
Thank you. The motion, I'd like to move the motion on page 13 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Haysberg?
Thank you. I want to support this motion because I think there's a need for the VEC to consider other viable options, because they've only considered one option that has 7 councillors, which is unsubdivided, and the other 2 options that they've put up have 6 councillors, and I just don't think that 6 councillors is viable. It would be tricky to select a mayor, and then the mayor would have a casting vote on controversial issues. So I don't think that it would be necessarily the best for democracy or for the municipality. And I think that this option allows for smaller communities within the Shire to be represented. I actually think that there's no perfect solution here, but I just think that the VEC really needs to be made aware that the options they've put up aren't ideal, and there needs to be another one that actually has 7 councillors. So that's why I'm supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I'd like to reserve my right.
Certainly, Councillor Horrigan. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion?
Can I ask a question? Is it likely that the VEC will discover what the vote is for this particular motion?
So through you, Mayor, so the submissions are due in tomorrow. So we have to get in basically in the morning, and what we can do is obviously provide the council report. The minutes may take a little longer, but we can also give them a link to this meeting so they can actually see the whether the motion's carried or what the motion is. And then we can forward the minutes once they're done. So it's just important tomorrow to get a submission on their website and provide that information to them.
So I'll speak against the motion. I'm not convinced that this is a better way to go than the 7 councillors unsubdivided. I believe Part A is the right way to go, that we need 7 councillors, and I think that there's a good argument for that, for having that number. But I'm not sure that I'm convinced, and I remain to be convinced by people that a single ward 7-member council is a good thing for the Shire. I do think that part of our problem has been, and certainly it was initially anyway for quite a while, being too parochial and looking after our own patch and getting absorbed in what was going on in our own patch rather than looking at the broader issues of the Shire. And we can see that playing out perhaps tonight even, where you get drawn into defending your particular patch and whatever the community in your particular patch wants. And I'm not saying necessarily that happened tonight, but it is a problem, and I do think that if you have an unsubdivided system, it avoids that particular problem. It also, I think, would also allow small communities such as Avenel, such as where I come from, being parochial, again, it allows them to band together and to vote for a particular candidate that they would like. Whilst also allowing them to vote for other candidates in other areas if they didn't like their particular local candidate. I am not convinced that single-member wards are a good idea. I don't like it in terms of either the collegiality of the thing. I think it will divide councillors and divide us up even more than we are. And I think if you have, as a group, if you're elected from all over the place, I think that's a much better idea. I also think that, it will be difficult for candidates to stand in electorates that they don't live in. So, there'll be a tendency for people to say, well, you don't live in this ward, you can't actually, represent this particular place because you don't live here. We're not going to vote for you and all that sort of thing. So you get all that sort of thing happening as well, which I think is not a very helpful or productive way of looking at it. So I'm urging councillors not to vote. So I'm afraid. Sorry, I didn't know this was coming up. I saw it the other day.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in relation to Deputy Mayor's comment there, I mean, we're stretched pretty thin time and geographically wise anyway, and for us to get around the whole Shire a whole time to try and be across the whole issues of the whole Shire would be nigh on impossible. We do no one any justice or service. I think having a base, whilst it can get you in the cheer squad and going mad for your particular ward, it can also, I hear what Councillor Hourigan says about Seven Creeks or Councillor Hay-Burke said about, and I listen to that, not having personal knowledge of it, and I put store and so forth in what they have to say, and then I can consider the issues from what's put forward by them and the council. If I was on my own floating about the Shire, I think I'd get discombobulated and not be able to make much sense of a lot of things. I mean, it's natural enough we've got to put our parochialness to the side of it and wear the advocacy Shire hat, but I think it's important for the community also to identify people, councillors, who they can come and put their issues to, so we can forward them on as well. So I don't know if and I think, I'm not sure about the Shepparton issue, but I think they've gone from back to the ward system, or want to go back to the ward system. I don't know why, but I didn't think it was, I think we did canvass that at some point, but anyway, so that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor, if no one, does anyone else want to speak? No? Okay, if Councillor Hourigan, would you like to speak?
Yes,
Did
please.
you reserve your right?
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I want to start why I'm deeply disappointed that the Strathbogie Shire Council has been charged $65,000 to provide assistance to the VEC in changing the electoral structure for the upcoming 2024 council elections. Moreover, it appears that the feedback provided was disregarded anyway, and that the committee has presented their own models instead. So it makes me think, what was the purpose of them seeking feedback in the first place? So if I would like to use a crystal ball, I presume that they have already made up their mind, and this exercise has, in my view, been time wasting in a time, as we heard tonight, of a community that needs us to focus on better things. So I just want to make that very clear, that I'm very upset. Then, to go on to the point, by changing the election system to a Shire-wide option, many groups may be excluded from running for council. And this is talking from my own personal experience as well. So this is due to financial constraints, geographical distance, and time for their commitments. This change could make it more difficult for the remote community members as well to become councillors. And this is speaking for them to even stand as a councillor, Shire-wide. We know how big our Shire is. We know, all of us sitting here in this room, the 7 of us, what the commitment requires for us to even campaign. Then if you're elected into this role and you're elected Shire-wide, then you're going to have phone calls from, which we do get phone calls now, but I'm predicting that they're going to be more prominent from all over the Shire. Now, just to get here today, it was a 40-minute car ride. And I can't see how that's going to be beneficial, that, if you've got a representative from Violet Town needing to drive all the way to Greytown because they're we all represent the whole community, but that's the only place that their councillors could possibly be. Because it has the potential to become too focused on the city centre, and which city centre is that going to be? Could be Nagambie. Eurolla's got more ratepayers, I suppose, in general. So what would then happen if all 7 were voted in from Violet Town and Eurolla? That means, all 7 representatives are now coming over to Nagambie, and then the community here in Nagambie missing out, or vice versa. They could all be from Nagambie. So I can't see the benefit in being unsubdivided, and I would like to hear a bit more about Shepparton. I don't know a bit more about that, but the rumours that we get told is that it's very city-centric, and that all the other parts of the community of Shepparton are essentially, I suppose, neglected in a way. So I very much support this notice of motion, hence why I said. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Councillor Haysberg, did you want to sum up?
Well, as a citizen, a private citizen, I have to, just for full transparency, I did select the unsubdivided as my preferred option, 7 councils unsubdivided. But then I listened to the community, and I feel like in the opinion of sort of smaller communities within the Shire, that they need the ability to be heard, and they feel that a ward-based system is their preferred option. So really, in doing this motion tonight, I just would hope that the VEC will consider 2 options that I think are viable, because I don't think the 6, as I mentioned before, I don't think the 6 councillor options viable. So please listen to the Shire and the need for 7 councillors.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. I'd just like to remind the community as well that they too can make submissions to this next round of VEC feedback. It is due tomorrow at 5 p.m, so you'll need to hop to it. But we do encourage community to participate in this project. It's not just for councillors, it's for the whole municipality to participate in, and it would be beneficial for community members to do so. The next monthly meeting of Strathbogie Shire Council is scheduled to be held on Tuesday the 18th of April 2023 back here at the Nagambie Lakes Regatta Centre, commencing at 6 p.m. There being no further business, I declare that the meeting is closed at